Hi, this is Sean Coles. I'm joined by my friend Ryan Lake, and this is the weekly Roundup Hockey Edition. Now, we're going to start off, as always, with quick recap of the last week or so with all the Canadian teams. I think we'll start off with the Toronto Maple Leafs, who currently sit with a record of 10-9-5. And in the last week, they were on a Western road trip. They started off with a game against the Oilers that they won 4-2. They then went in the next night to play the Flames, where they lost 3-0. And then played Saturday against the Canucks. That was a pretty big rematch there after all the craziness in the last game. They lost 3-2 in the shootout. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
All eyes were on Connor McDavid again in Edmonton. Totally. There. It was a pretty decent game, to be honest. McDavid got a couple points, but the Leafs won. Now they kind of got hung out to dry by their goalie on the back-to-back in Calgary.
Enroth, man, it's killing me.
And that's probably sparked the decision that happened of sending him down to, or placing him on waivers for the purpose of sending him down to the Marlies. But the Canucks game was interesting, especially watching the whole Vancouver team getting the player safety meeting ahead of the game. But they didn't play a lot of games this week. It was kind of slow. A lot of the teams were kind of on road trips, it seemed. But other than that, Austin Matthews has been scoring some goals finally.
He's been on fire now after going 13 games without a goal. But what was interesting about that Canucks game? It's one that they should have won on the balance of play. They should have won that game. But man, Ryan Miller, he's still the bane of my existence. He just somehow always turns it up a notch, except for that game back in November against the Leafs. I don't know what it is, but you know what?
Shades of his past.
Exactly. He gets one good game out of 3 or something along those lines these days. But hey, you know what? They came out of it with 3 points out of 6 games, half-point pace for the Leafs. That is better than last year, I think.
Yeah, and they're getting more experience, too, for all these young guys.
Absolutely, and we'll move on now to the Montreal Canadiens, who currently stand with a record of 17-6-2. But the last week was a little rough for them. They went into Anaheim, lost 2-1. They went into San Jose, again, lost 2-1. And then they must have been playing the Kings at home, and they won 5-4, but in shootout. So not a great Western road swing for them.
And Carey Price seemed almost human for the last few games. I was looking at the save percentage for halfway through the games, and he had like an 864 save percentage. Mind you, he finished the game with like a 900 save percentage, but he didn't have the same style of play that he did. Yeah. Now, again, he did bounce back with a win against the Kings. It was a shootout. Right. The only reason why they won that shootout was because it was Peter Budaj in net for the Kings.
Well, and they won that game. They got the 2 points. They at least got even if they'd lost, they would have still gotten the pity point. But that's 4 goals against Carey Price, and that's 6 goals against total that week. That's not good.
Yeah, they are dealing with some injuries too. Like Galchenyuk, he's out. Yeah. I didn't see what happened to him, but I saw that he is out indefinitely.
That was a weird one by the looks of it. That was a weird injury for him.
I don't know if it's something that they're waiting for.
He got injured in the Kings game because it was some sort of a knee on knee.
It was in the first period, I believe,
against Kopitar, and Kopitar is going to go through most people.
He's a big guy. Yeah,
he's a big dude.
So hopefully he recovers fast. But other than that, really, they still have an impressive record of 17-6-2. So I mean, they're not going to win every game, but you got to put together something better than 1 out of every 3.
They need their offense to step up when Price isn't playing out of this world. And against the Ducks and the Sharks, they did not get that.
Right, and they did against the Kings, thank God. Otherwise, it would have been 3 losses for that week.
And that's when you wonder if the Kings had Quick in net, would it have gone differently? Because Quick is not the greatest goaltender ever these days because he's too all over the place, very entertaining to watch.
Never in position.
Exactly, never in position. But he does pick out that one good game in 5 or so that he's just lights out. And you wonder what might have happened if he'd been in net. But you know what? Budaj was in net, and the Kings are still doing well anyways, which is good.
Did you see Radulov's shootout goal, though? That was a beautiful goal.
I did not see that.
If you could shoot backhand like that every game, probably going to go in every time.
But, you know, I wish that they would give 3-on-3 more time. Then maybe they go for 10 minutes because it is just so damn entertaining.
Especially when they include the goalies. When you see them pass it back to the goalie, and then the goalie kind of passes it around. It's very kind of get a line change. It's fun to watch, and it's definitely eliminated a lot of shootouts, but I think it should be 7 or 10 minutes for the overtime.
You know what? I'd be good with 7 minutes. You give it an extra couple of minutes, something might happen. Well, and you know what? Speaking of 3-on-3, I saw a goal by the Bruins that they did against Florida last night. Perfect, because the defenseman swung out behind the blue line, picked up some speed, and came back in. Blew right in on Luongo, deked right past him. It was gorgeous. Definitely suggest that you take a look at that video. I saw it on Sportsnet. But I think now we will move on to our next team. This team was a little busier. The Ottawa Senators, currently sitting with a record of 15-9-2. Wow.
That's a little bit surprising.
Very surprising.
For having a trio of goaltenders, not knowing what to do with them, and the whole,
Well, and Anderson is off again.
On again, off again.
Yeah.
It's
how he's been able to maintain his play without playing regularly is outstanding.
And for how his team has been able to play with, I understand the situation that they're going through, but you have to think that, changing the goaltenders and that off ice has got to be distracting a little bit.
You know what? I feel that it's helping them gel as a team a little more, pull together, and really giving them that extra oomph when things aren't going too well. But Guy Boucher's got them playing a much more defensive style of play that is good for them because they're not scoring that much.
Right.
So they're relying on their defense. But when you get games like last night when they played the Penguins and lost 8-5, and they were up 4-2 at one point in the middle of the second period. They were up 4-2, but in the second half of the game, the Penguins come back and score 6 goals on you. That's not good.
The Penguins, though, are also playing another brand of hockey right now. The Penguins are playing old school 90s, fly down the ice, score on every position, every possession type of hockey, right? I mean, who was it? Was it Rust last night that had a hat trick?
Yeah, Rust had the hat trick last night.
Crosby scored. Crosby had a wicked shot.
Crosby usually scores.
Again, they had, the Senators did play 5 games this week, so,
busy week.
Busy week for them. They started out the 2-0 win against the Rangers, then they lost 5-4 to the Sabres. They lost 3-2 to the Flyers in overtime. They beat the Panthers 2-0, and then they got walloped 8-5 by Pittsburgh. Yeah. So 5 games in 7 days is a pretty busy schedule. And that was the 5th game, but still no excuse to score 8 goals or allow 8 goals.
Now I don't know if it was. I don't think it was Anderson in net. It was probably Condon, but that's just brutal defending. Yeah. That is just brutal. But anyways, we will move it along to the Winnipeg Jets, currently sitting with a record of 13-13-2. That's not good for where they need to be.
It's not, but compared to what their record was the last time that we were going over this,
getting a little better.
And if we go back, if you listen back to that video, I said something to you saying for them to win, they need Laine to score.
Laine's been scoring again.
Been scoring, and they've been putting together some wins.
Right.
And
that's not good when you're relying that much on an 18-year-old.
Right.
And to me, with the defense that they have and the forwards that they've got, and I know they've still got more coming through, but they need to be in a win-now mode.
Oh, yeah, for sure, 100%. And they're kind of... They think they're in a win-now mode, but they're kind of in a...
They're not playing it.
No, they're not. And it's getting past the first quarter of the season, so you're starting to see who the real contenders are and who the the pretenders are.
They had a good week, and they only lost 2 games... Or 1 game, excuse me. Another game went into overtime.
Yeah, so, they went 4-1 this week.
Yeah, so it was a good week for them. But despite that, looking at the record and really, they've got a narrow window of probably the next maybe 2 years between this year and maybe another 2 years after that where they can win a cup. After that, they got to start making some hard decisions on who they're keeping and who they're letting go, because that's what happens with these teams that draft well. They've got so much young talent, but you can't keep them for very long, right? Chicago is the obvious.
Chicago.
You got to look at that, right? And how they've been able to keep that carousel of parts coming through to be able to support the main cast. But the problem is that they need to be doing better than they are now. They need to be closer to winning the cup if they're going to with this current squad, and they're just not there. And you got to wonder if management is starting to look at whether or not they need to replace Paul Maurice.
Well, I was actually reading the Score saying that one of the coaches on the hot seat is Paul Maurice. He's basically, the poll they had going is that he's going to be one of the coaches that is predicted to be fired first in the NHL this season.
And now with what has gone on in Florida, with Gerard Gallant being fired, and with the particular brand of hockey that Winnipeg plays, you got to wonder if he's going to be, if Gallant would be particularly suited to being the coach of the Winnipeg Jets.
He would fit well. I mean, he had a lot of good youth, and like is still a lot of good youth. You know, you look at guys like Ekblad and all those guys that they have down in Florida, and it was a little surprising to see him fired, let alone on a road trip.
That's true, but that we'll get into in a little bit. But with the players that Winnipeg have got, they need to be prepared to win within the next couple of years, and right now they're just not there. Now, part of that might be down to goaltending as well.
They are young. They're very young this year.
They do have very young goalies, but you know what? You got to wonder if maybe Paul Maurice has taken them as far as they're going to go, if they need to maybe hand off to a different coach. And
I think that's as far as Paul Maurice can go as a coach.
And that's what I mean. I think that he might be reaching the end of the line with the Winnipeg Jets, but you know what? He'd be easily hireable somewhere else because he is experienced,
but I see him being better suited as an assistant coach to a little bit more experienced coach.
Well, there's not many more people more experienced than Paul Maurice. He's been around the league a lot of years,
and I won't disagree with that.
And he does have a cup as well.
But ever since the last 5 years or so, he's been steadily downhill, pretty much.
Well, he's done a half decent job with Winnipeg, and I say half decent because they have to play some pretty difficult teams fairly regularly.
They're in the Central Division.
Yeah, they're in a pretty rough conference. So, you know what? They're up against some pretty stiff competition there. But like I said, you gotta wonder if maybe he's reached the end of the line with Winnipeg and he needs a fresh start. Maybe Winnipeg needs a fresh start. But
might be mutually beneficial.
Exactly. But you know what? That's something we'll probably keep an eye on down the road because we'll see what happens, right? But you know what? We'll move on now to the Calgary Flames, who are currently sitting with a record of 13-13-2. Man, getting Gaudreau back really helped them. They got a pretty big win,
and riding the hot start of their backup goaltender.
Who saw Chad Johnson coming out of nowhere to?
I was looking
have a season like he's having.
I was looking at what Brian Elliott's record was, and it was like 1-8 or something like that.
It's awful.
And and then I looked to see that's because they were winning, and it was like Minnesota, I think it was, and they were winning like 2-1. And I saw that it was Johnson in net again, and so I decided to look because every time I look at Calgary games, it's always Johnson in net,
riding the hot hand,
and he seems to be worth more money than Elliott is currently.
But you know what? I don't foresee that lasting long term. Like I see them doing is riding the hot hand while he's hot, and then as he starts to cool off, bring Brian Elliott back in, get him more games, and get him his confidence back.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, if you can get that kind of productivity out of a backup goalie, that's what you need.
Yes, but it's not often that you get that kind of productivity.
Not at all.
To me, he's riding a hot streak, and hot streaks eventually end. Just look at Andrew Hammond. Yeah. That was an insane streak that he had over like 30 games. And he's shipped out.
Yep.
Essentially, he plays in the minors now. He just was not able to cut it, whether or not that was maybe a mental thing over the course of what is a fairly grueling season. Who knows? But I don't see Chad Johnson keeping that up.
I don't think so, but I mean, as long as he can, then good for them.
Exactly. You know what? Getting Goudreau back will be a big boost to them. I think that's definitely going to help their offense because they have kind of sputtered there a little bit. But oh man, they've got to step it up because they thought they'd be better than they are now.
Yeah, they also thought that they'd get a lot more production from their top guys that they haven't quite got yet.
Yeah, Sean Monahan has not been performing as well as they thought he might.
Or Dougie Hamilton hasn't been performing really either.
Dougie Hamilton I don't think has been too bad this year, but yeah, he's got to start living up to that pretty big. The people that they've given big contracts to are not yet playing to their big contract
to what they're
potential.
Worth.
Exactly. And you know, you look at a guy like Sam Bennett, who's a great player, great young player, and he's going to be huge in this league down the road. But he's got to start taking more steps as well to be that consistent performer. So, you know, we'll see how things go with Calgary. Hopefully they can maybe get on a bit of a hot streak. You know, now that, as far as I know, they're done playing the Leafs for the year. That's the main thing for me. Don't want them riding in on a hot streak. But
I used to feel that way when they were in Colorado's division.
But hopefully they can get on a bit of a roll and get some more wins under the belt. And hopefully Elliott does better because he is quite underpaid for a goalie, and this is a contract year for him.
And he is a good goalie. Like
he is.
He was fantastic in St. Louis last year. So
now he had a better defense in front of him. I don't know if there's maybe some of that feeling out period because you look at Anderson, right? Freddie Anderson, he was awful the first few games of the season, but he's gotten better.
He's adjusted to his surroundings.
He's adjusted, started playing a little bit more like Freddie, and that's helped kind of stabilize the Leafs. And I know with Chad Johnson now, with them riding the hot hand, but you got to wonder if maybe they just need to stick Elliott back in net and just ride him until he figures it out.
Yeah, and he will figure it out. He's a professional goalie. You know what I mean? It's not going to be something that, you know, that it's just going to suck for the rest of his life. He's going to figure it out one way or another.
Well, hopefully that comes sooner rather than later, because
especially in a contract year.
Well, especially not only that, but you got limited time to really get yourself into a playoff position, and right now they're behind the 8 ball. They got to start playing better. They got to start getting more wins, and they're on a 3-game win streak now, which is good.
For sure.
They got to continue that.
Oh, yeah. And it's got to be, you know, step up from everyone, not just the goalie. Whichever one's playing, it has to be.
Monahan's got to start putting up points. Goudreau's got to start putting up points. Everyone's got to start chipping in if they're going to get back to the playoffs like they were a couple of years ago.
The top 6 need to step it up.
Absolutely. But now we will turn to the Edmonton Oilers, currently sitting with a record of 14-10-3. Not a bad record, but if McDavid doesn't play and doesn't get the points these days, their offense just isn't worth anything.
Did you see there was kind of a little bit of an iffy situation with him?
A little kerfuffle,
if
you will, yeah.
He got hit, whatever happened, hit the ice.
His chin bounced off the ice.
Chin bounced off the ice. He held his mouth. One of the concussion spotters pulled him out of the game.
Yep.
At absolutely the worst time possible.
You know what? It wasn't a great time, but it was still in the second period.
Right. There was still a lot of time to come back from that, but it was at the beginning of there was a little bit of a 5-on-3 time there.
This is what I say to the people that say, "Oh, it's a terrible call. Why did he pull him out?" Would you rather them just leave him in and there be something wrong with him and he'd end up being out for months with concussion, or would you rather than play it safe, bring him in, make sure everything's okay, and not put him back out if everything's not okay? He came back out in the end. It's not like he didn't finish playing the game. But with concussions as prevalent as they are now, and in the game, the way it's played, it's so much faster, the hitting, and which makes the hitting harder as well, and especially for how fast he is, you got to take those precautions, because otherwise the league is going to be culpable down the road. So they have to take a safety first approach to that. And I know Patrick Maroon was going on about, it's a man's game and yada yada yada, but you know what, there are so many players that are part of that lawsuit regarding concussions against the NHL that, you know what, they probably said the same thing when they were playing. But you know what, until Pat Maroon is in that situation where he's got a degenerative brain disease because of all the concussions that he's had over the course of his career, until he's in that spot, he really has no basis to say, oh, it's a man's game, you know, get over it, and crap happens. You know, you've got to be safe at the same time.
I agree and I disagree. I mean, I agree that, you know, especially with the NFL and the amount of, you know, concussions, it's the same kind of idea. But then there was also the other side of it where there was a lot more instances of people falling or hitting their head and concussion spotters not doing it. But people are also saying that the only reason why he was pulled out was because it was Connor McDavid and he is the star. Whereas if it would have happened to, say, Patrick Maroon and he hit his face off the ice, it wouldn't have happened and they wouldn't have pulled him out.
I see where you're going with that, but at the same time, the league's got to protect its stars.
Oh, I agree.
And they don't want another situation like what they had with Sidney Crosby, where he essentially ended up missing about 2 seasons.
Which was also a misdiagnosis as well.
Now, the misdiagnosis did not help with that, but they've got to be careful, and they got to protect their stars. And whether it's just bringing him off the ice for a bit to make sure he's okay.
Or they have to sit in like a quiet room, right?
You know what? To me, that's what they need to be doing just in terms of the safety of their own players. Now, it's a very subjective thing. It is. And it's to each of the people that watch these games, it's up to their own individual feelings and thought processes for what happens in an individual moment. But they got to make a darn quick decision.
For sure. But then, you know, you wonder if these people are also being biased as well, right? They're paid not to be, but you got to wonder if there is some sort of bias there.
I really doubt that there would be. To me, I don't think there was any bias involved. I think it was just playing it safe. But you know what? Edmonton fans get all up in arms because, oh, it's Connor McDavid and they took our best player off the ice. Well, you know what? You've got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You've got Puljujarvi. You have Milan Lucic. You've got a whole host of other good players that should be able to step up in his absence while he's, you know, being looked after to make sure that he's okay and doesn't have a concussion. You can't just complain that one player is gone. As amazing a generational player as he is, you have other players that could have stepped up and could have maybe scored a goal on that 5-on-3, but they didn't.
And you could have just looked at it as like he was tired and he was just taking a couple shifts off, right? But I can see where they're coming from. Now, speaking of Puljujarvi, apparently I was reading something that apparently, you know, he's
got to be sent down.
He's having issues with, you know, learning English, missing his home, adapting to the new food, and you know, it is the perils of coming to North America, learning.
He's 18.
Exactly.
Well, maybe 19 by now.
But
yeah, he's young. He's a young guy. It's going to happen, and
he needs that time to kind of get used to his growing body, to get used to the new systems, to get used to the, you know, the smaller ice, get used to all this. You know, North America is a lot different than European hockey,
absolutely,
as well as the culture and the food and missing his family and the language. You know, not everyone develops as well or can characteristically grow like Ovechkin could or these other guys, right?
You know what? He'll get there in the end. I think it's just growing pains for him.
It's just going to take a couple months or a season of him to just get used to it.
Absolutely. But we're going to finish off now with the Vancouver Canucks currently sitting at 11, 12, and 2. And you know what? It wasn't a terrible week for them. 2 wins, 1 loss. But I still see them kind of trending in the wrong direction. They've been better since that game against the Leafs. I think that might have kind of given them the kick in the ass that they needed. But you know what? They are a team that are just going in the wrong direction. And it's going to be interesting to see where they come out.
Yeah, I mean, other than, you know, there wasn't really too much to touch on them this week, other than the whole player safety meeting before the Leafs game and the whole Goodbranson and Matt Martin thing, which ended up being a pretty decent fight. I mean,
that was a good fight.
I'd say I would give that one a draw, to be honest. You know, Martin took some pretty good shots at the beginning,
and he
got
gave
dropped,
some good ones,
and then he got back up and gave some good ones. Got the takedown, so I'd say that one was a draw.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It was, you know, it was a pretty interesting game there. Other than that, there wasn't really too much, I think, other than Benning said that he doesn't think that it's fair, or not Benning, who was it? It was the
coach?
Maybe it might have been the coach.
Willie Desjardins.
Was it Desjardins or was it
Jim Benning?
It might have been, one of those two said that that if they rebuilt with the Sedins there, that it would not be fair to the Sedins to do that.
Well, then they got to find a way to trade the Sedins.
That's what I'm thinking, because you're not going to go anywhere without rebuilding, and you're not going to go anywhere with keeping the way things are and keeping the Sedins.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. And you know what? It'll be interesting to see what happens, and if they can maybe pull a little bit last ounce of that Brian Burke magic out of there that got them the Sedins in the first place. Find a place to trade them. Hold back 50% of the salary, and because they're only under contract, I think, until the end of next year,
right,
or something along those lines. And to a winning team, like what winning team wouldn't take that? You'd probably have to take some salary back too. But the problem with that, Vancouver can't afford that. They don't have like any cap space. So they might be able to take some back with what they would save with what they're sending out for the Sedins, but
the Sedins they're pretty heavily paid. Like they're
$7+ million a year.
So even if you were to take 50% back, you are freeing up a decent amount of. It's not much, but it's enough to sign one, maybe two younger guys,
Absolutely.
or a decent forward. The other thing that was huge for Vancouver this week was they were talking about the Schneider trade for Horvat, and Horvat's he's slowly turning into that player that they thought he was going to be. And
man, but you've got to think that they are just kicking themselves for letting Schneider go. I know when they did, they still had Luongo, but they don't have Luongo anymore.
But they're saying now that they're happy with Horvat who he is, and that they're happy that they made the trade.
What else can they say? They can't just come out and go, "Oh man, that was a terrible trade. Wish we hadn't done it." They can't do that, because then that's just going to shatter any remaining confidence, self-respect, anything that they still have. They can't come out and say that. But Schneider is quietly one of the best goalies in the league. He steals games for New Jersey. You can't think that they want that back in place of Horvat.
Oh, for sure. But at the same time, I mean, if Horvat wasn't relied upon at such a young age, I feel like he could have developed a lot different.
He still isn't that relied upon, though. That's the problem, is that he is one of their better offensive forwards. He needs to be out there in the crunch time, and Desjardins doesn't put him out.
But that's what, like, his first year, he was relied upon. He was playing well, and then they kind of just took him a back seat to the Sedins. Let the Sedins go out there, do their thing. When the Sedins aren't scoring,
because they're in a win now mode,
right? And then you don't send guys like Horvat out there, so they don't have the confidence to go out there, or they don't get the time per game to go out there and do anything. It's kind of. But
Absolutely.
he is, I feel like he would be a lot better if he did get more ice time, if he did get, the confidence. But I don't know, it's going to be something that we'll have to follow.
Absolutely. And you know what? I really hope they don't end up getting rid of Olli Juolevi and keep him. He's going to be a monster defenseman for them a couple of years down the road. He's going to be
He's fun to watch in London.
He is. He's a silky smooth defenseman that basically does kind of everything well. He's good in both ends of the ice, and so far, and we'll see how that translates.
Yeah,
to the
he's
pro
still got to
game.
develop.
Sometimes it doesn't, but he's just watching him in London over the weekend. He's too good for the OHL, and the sooner they can get him into the AHL, the better. But you know what? That's something we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on as the season and the next seasons progress. And
we're from London, so it's sad to see when these good guys like Mitch Marner, Tkachuk, all these guys.
Imagine how much better they'd be if they still had Tkachuk and Mitch Marner.
Oh, it would be unreal.
Unstoppable.
Yeah.
But you know what? Marner's tearing it up. So's Tkachuk.
Tkachuk he's gritty.
He is.
He's literally like his old man.
He's been one of their better forwards in Calgary, which is surprising because he's 18.
And he didn't start the season off that well, that everyone thought he was going to get sent back down. And then all of a sudden he started scoring, he started checking, he started defending
his game.
Yeah, he started doing what he likes to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now he just got to get Max Jones up there, up there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's been injured the last couple of games, I think. But they got to get Max Jones up in Anaheim.
Yep.
That's who I was sad. I hoped to God he would drop enough for the Leafs to nab him in the second round, but no dice. No dice. I was disappointed, but you know what? He got drafted by Anaheim, who are going to love his blend of size and speed.
And his shot. He's got, for his power forward kind of bigger guy, He brings the tenacity, and he's got a rocket.
You've almost got to wonder if he's maybe another Corey Perry.
Yeah.
Like late round pick, but he develops right.
He comes out of that same system too.
Yeah, absolutely. See, London Knights, the best place to play. London,
best junior hockey team.
Absolutely. But you know what? I think that's where we need to wrap it up for the roundup, because we've talked about all the Canadian teams, but something I wanted to kind of touch on right now and kind of get your thoughts on it are the NHL and the Olympics, and then going into from there the CBA.
It's funny how they agreed to pay for it, whatnot, if they extended, was it by 3 years?
Yeah, if they extended the CBA by 3 years.
And watching an interview with was it Marc-Edouard Vlasic?
Yeah,
and he kind of laughed it off. The notion that you'll pay for us to go, but we have to do this for another 3 years. It was almost an insult, right?
Oh, absolutely, and they did turn it down. I think it was late last week.
Yeah, late last week they officially turned it down. Now,
which everyone knew.
Oh yeah, it was. But I want the NHL needs to have the players play in the Olympics.
They do and they don't this time, because I want them to be in the Olympics. That's really the reason I watch the Olympics, is because I love watching the NHL players play there. They want to go. The IOC is, and I think it's the IIHF, the International Ice Hockey Federation, are ponying up the $10 million to go, and the NHL is still dragging their feet. And they said initially that it was a money issue.
Oh yeah. And it's because to insure these players, their contracts and whatnot, when they get hurt, it's a lot of money. When you look at guys like Crosby or Tavares or Ovechkin or these guys who are going, it's going to be a lot of money to not only get them there, but to insure them while they're there.
It's, I think, somewhere between $10 and $20 million. But the IIHF has found the money. They're like their representative has said, no, we're going to pay regardless.
Oh,
whether it comes from the IOC, like us, we will figure this out and get it paid. And it was after that. It was only after that statement was made that Bettman came out and said, you extend the CBA for 3 years? Yeah, we'll let you go. But the players won out in the, I think it's 2018-2019 season. Yeah. They don't want to continue with that CBA because of, oh God, what's it called?
The escrow?
Escrow, yes. I was totally blanking on it, even though I've researched the crap out of it the last week. And I get where they're coming from with wanting to renegotiate the escrow, because that's a lot of money.
That they're losing.
Yeah, that they're losing and not getting back. And so I get why they don't want to extend themselves for another 3 years. But the NHL making that offer shows that the owners know that they've got a damn good deal.
Oh, they do.
And they want to hang on to that for as long as possible.
They're shortchanging the players. And
absolutely. Which is what owners do.
Well, yeah.
Why should we expect anything else?
But no matter whether or not they say yes or no, you're going to get guys like Ovechkin who are going to go anyways. You're going to get guys who are going to take the suspensions, take the fines, who are going to go play for their country.
A few of them can. A few of them can get away with it. Ovechkin being one of those people that can get away with it.
But at the same time, to me, it's aside from the NHL, watching the Olympics without hockey players, whatever country wins, mind you, if it was all amateurs, Canada would probably still win, because we do tend to place.
The problem is that you'd end up having half the teams anyways from like Sweden
or the KHL.
Because of the KHL players, and I'm sure the KHL's not going to have an issue.
Oh, not at all.
Shutting down for a couple of weeks,
especially because they don't even have to go as far. The guys don't get paid as much.
Exactly, but you know what? I think part of the issue as well is that they don't really want to go to South Korea. Not really, but it's the next Olympics when it's in China.
Right.
That's where the NHL wants to expand, because who doesn't want to expand to a country that has like 1.5 billion people?
Well, didn't the KHL just reach? I think they recently expanded there.
They did.
And I know for the Olympics that the South Korea is they are fast tracking Canadians who are playing in the KHL. They are giving them Canadian or South Korean citizenship, so that when they field the team at the Olympics,
they can pick them.
And they don't get embarrassed in their home. They're at their home Olympics. So there's a few Canadians over in the KHL that are getting Korean citizenships.
I would like to see the NHL go. I think it's beneficial to the league. I think it's beneficial to the Olympics, but I get why the owners kind of don't want to, because not only do they have to shut down the league, but really, who cares? So they compress it a little bit. It's not like they didn't do that with the World Cup.
Right.
Like, please don't give me that crap. But at the same time, they don't really get any profits out of it.
They don't get many profits because, it's if you're not supporting a brand, you're supporting a country.
Yeah.
But the thing is you're on a side of the world that does not have a lot of exposure to hockey. Send your NHL players. People will see guys like Crosby, see guys like Ovechkin, and then after the Olympics, they will want to follow them and follow their, boom, there you go. You got new NHL fans, you got new Pittsburgh fans, you got new Toronto fans.
Which is why I think the NHL is focusing more on China in 2022 as opposed to South Korea.
But it should start with South Korea so that when it comes back to China, that people are super interested. It's not that far to go from South Korea to China.
Oh, I know. I know. It's not very far at all. But you know what? I get why they're hesitant to go.
Oh, I do. It's regardless of how much money it is, but
I hope they go because the money issue isn't the issue anymore.
Oh no, it's not.
Now it's just the owners dragging their feet and just not wanting to go, right? So hopefully a little player pressure, maybe they put it on can do that. But they've called their bluff with the CBA.
If they all go, are they really going to suspend guys though? Like, are they really going to suspend? Burns, Duchesne, all of them all at once. I don't think they would do that.
I would not put it past them to do that. That would be a big power play, though. And if they did suspend all the players that went, and to be honest, I don't know that Burns would go. He might.
Depends on if they roll with the Olympic roster or if they roll with their world hockey, whatever, the World Cup of Hockey roster.
Yeah, it really depends on what's going to happen. But you know what? Everything comes down to that CBA in 2018, 2019.
I just hope that there's not another lockout.
You know what? I feel like there might be because that's just the way that Bettman operates. He's like, nah, we'll just lock you out and grind you down. He's like, I don't care.
He still makes his money.
Yeah, he still makes his money. The owners don't make any money, and neither do the players, but it's the players that are hurting more, right?
Right. And half the players that want to play, they go over and sign contracts in Europe or somewhere.
Most of them go there. Some of the younger players can still go down to the AHL because those teams aren't part of the CBA, right? They're completely separate. But it all comes down to that escrow issue. And right now, they're paying about 16% of every paycheck into escrow because of how it balances it out, right? And Toronto is one of the worst teams for that because they pay more salary than what their actual cap is.
Right
now, part of the issue league wide is from all those old front loaded deals that they made, like the one that Kovalchuk tried to make for 17 years that the NHL finally went no, this is done. But it's because of that all those deals that were super front loaded have made it so that teams' actual salaries are much higher than what the actual cap is. So over the next couple of years, it should balance itself out. But from what I've been reading, the players want to go to something like what the NBA has, where it's capped at 10%, and that I get. I do get why you got to have escrow because this crap does happen.
Now the NBA is also a lot different because the NBA has a salary cap,
but a luxury tax.
But they have a luxury tax, so you could have a $50 million, $100 million salary. You could be at $200 million, and you would just pay the luxury tax. Like, look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their owner pays the luxury tax every year because they have guys like LeBron, Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving, all those guys. I don't want the luxury tax in the NHL, but I do think they should go with the max 10%.
I think they need to because you think about it, and it doesn't affect all players. And you know what? The escrow issue more affects the players that are under long-term contract already. Like the current players don't really, like the ones that are coming up in contract years don't care as much,
right?
Because there's more money on the table, right?
But guys like Kane or Taves
that have already signed long-term deals, they're the ones that are having that extra 16% coming off their paycheck
for however long.
Yeah. Now it doesn't affect some players so much depending on the state where you live. Or
which is another reason why people in Toronto are getting screwed, because not only do you have such a high tax, But
they get screwed and they don't, because don't forget that they get paid in American.
Right.
They don't get paid in Canadian, so that difference does kind of help.
But the 13 or whatever % tax that they get.
Well, no, because that's just sales tax. They get taxed about 50%.
Right.
It's about 45, I think. Between 45 and 50% is what they get taxed, depending on how much they make. Now, that's the average person that makes that much. That's what they get taken off their salary. Now, imagine if that average person then had another 16% taken off.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think they would put up with that? Hell no. So why should the players?
Right.
Like, I get the reason for escrow, and you know what? I think escrow will be less of a big issue once, just those big front-loaded contracts start winding down and going into their later years. But that's a big sticking point for the players right now, and I don't blame them.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, that's going to be probably the biggest thing when they have the next, bargaining.
Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting to see exactly what deal when they finally do work one out, whether there's a lockout for months or however long. It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with.
I feel like at this point they can't afford to have another lockout.
No, especially considering there was just one 3-4 years ago.
It doesn't help the game when you have, it doesn't help you grow the game. How are you supposed to grow the game when you start getting newer fans and then all of a sudden go, now we're done for half the season? Come on back to us in another 4 months, right?
When the owners are somewhat greedy.
Yeah, exactly. That does nothing for new fans. They're going to go off and find another sport to watch. And, the NHL is the smaller sport of all the big four, right? It's not as popular in the U.S. as it could be, but with having these endless labor disputes and then issues with stars and whatever, because NHL or hockey and the NHL is a pretty conservative area.
For sure.
It's just not growing the game. And what I would like to see is what I think it was the NBA the NBA was doing, where they're still negotiating their CBA, but they're still playing. Right.
Yeah, the NBA, but their commissioner is more transparent. Their commissioner is more people-friendly than Gary Bettman is.
Well, and that's when you got to wonder if, because the owners are just looking at the bottom line, but maybe they need to start looking at it a little differently and go, this is what we could be doing to make even more money, but Gary's not helping us get there.
No.
By consistently locking out the players every few years.
It sets things back, and he has more of like a caveman style to negotiations. He doesn't, he's almost like a torture cell. He just does things his own way and refuses to work.
Yeah. Which you know what, serves him well, and it's gotten him, and it's gotten him, and it's gotten the league where they are now by him acting the way he is. But you know what? It's like what we were talking about earlier with the Winnipeg Jets and Paul Maurice. Maybe the league needs to move on from Gary Bettman,
right.
Find someone new, come in with some new energy that can maybe lead the league into higher revenue,
new directions.
Exactly. Just lead them into where they can go and take advantage of the possibility that the league has for it. It could be so much bigger and better than it is now. But I really feel like under Gary Bettman, it's just not getting there.
It's like a stalemate almost. It's the same old, and then you renegotiate, then it's the same old. There's no growth.
Yeah, and they need to experience some of that growth, and that growth will be better for everyone. It will get the players more money, and will get the owners more money. But you know what? That's something that we are going to have to, as we always say, keep an eye on. Because that is going to be key down the road.
That's what gives us something to do every week.
Exactly. That's what gets me up in the morning, being able to think about the next CBA. But next, we're going to go on to talk about Florida and what's going on down there. Gerard Gallant getting fired, and just the manner in which it was done has gotten everyone up in arms.
Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of different reports saying that, they didn't even get him a car. That was kind of debunked. Saying
overblown.
They did say that they offered him, but he refused to because he's, whatever. But I feel like they should have waited until he at least got back with the team.
Yeah.
I feel like on a road trip right after a game when you're waiting to get to the airport.
He hasn't even, like, there's not even a hotel. They can't meet in private.
Right. It's just, you're fired.
Point blank, you're fired. Yeah, it was not done in a private setting.
And he's not a bad coach. Like,
No, he's
look
not.
at what he did with Florida last year. Like, Florida had guys like Yager, Ekblad. You know, they had some injuries as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, you look at all these guys. Luongo had a good year last year. I got to go to a Florida game last year in Buffalo, and it was they played well last year.
Two of the most sad sack teams in the entire league.
Hey, didn't Florida went pretty like they
did.
made the playoffs last year?
Yeah, no, they are a good team. But you know what? And I was listening to as I normally do. I listen to the Steve Dangle podcast a couple times a week, and they had on a minority owner from Florida, and he was talking about it, and he admitted that he's like, you know what, I take it upon ourselves. He's like, I wish they had waited till I got back, because I guess he was on a plane to Dublin, because you know it's what rich people do.
They just fly and visit Ireland.
Well, I think it was probably for work or something like that, but he's like, I wish they had waited till I got back, because he said I'm a little more used to dealing with conflict than the majority owner is. But he's like, and he said, you know what, I regret how it all went down, but he doesn't regret firing them.
Right.
And it's interesting because it leads what also the big hoopla has been about, aside from Doug McLean getting into the Twitter fight with Doug Sifu,
yeah,
who was the minority owner that was on the Steve Dangle podcast. He what was Doug McLean doing getting into it? Whatever.
It's
but,
Doug McLean.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy old man. But all the pundits get up in arms and turn it into this old school versus analytical thinking for the game. And baseball went through the same thing.
Moneyball.
Yeah, exactly. Moneyball. That's how I know about it. I don't really pay attention to baseball aside from that movie.
Yeah.
But it does lead in. It does bring up that conversation because Florida is much more analytics based. But when you're not a big franchise and you don't have a ton of money, you've got to find that extra little edge. And especially when it's a scouting based league now, where you have to nail it at the draft. Because if you don't nail it at the draft,
you struggle for years.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the Leafs. They drafted like no one for 6 years. They got lucky like with a Reimer,
right?
Who's not even a number one goalie, although that's debated.
Yeah.
And they have to find that extra little edge. And if it's by going through analytics, that's how they have to do it. Now, it was already known that Gerard Gallant his thinking didn't coincide with the ownership's thinking of moving forward. He is a good coach, but maybe for a different team and for a different style of running the team,
which could be Winnipeg, like we were discussing.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? They've got to do what they've got to do, and the league is going to modernize. It's going to happen over time that it does end up becoming, the analytics becomes a much bigger part of the league. And you can see it now, but there's still enough of those older guys that have been around the league a long time that are pushing back against it.
Like Brian Burke.
Brian Burke, I don't even think knows how to say analytics.
Or modern.
Yeah. I don't know what he's trying to do with just wearing the tie.
Yeah.
He's just... either wear the tie or lose it, bud.
I think he's just going loopy in his old age.
Probably. But it's going to happen eventually in the league. It just with younger guys that come up, it's what's going to happen. And the older generation is pushing back, as the older generation is wanting to do.
They do that in everything,
exactly.
Not just hockey.
That's just reality. But it's going to happen.
It is.
And the sooner you get on board with it, the better. And the fact that Florida's doing it now, I think, will end up paying dividends for them down the road.
It should. I mean, they did it early enough in the season, too, that, if it's going to be something that is going to be a drastic change for them, they still have a lot of time to, turn things around.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Again, it's going to be one of those things where the season's going to have to play out before we can look at it. But they're the first team, I think, out of many that are going to be stepping forward and doing this new school approach.
Well, and you look at Arizona. That's why they hired the youngest GM in league history, is because he's I think, as far as I know, he's much more analytics based. But now their coach also, I think, is it Dave Talon?
I think so.
Coach? he takes a much larger role in it as well, and that's
Right.
part of the reason why that situation is set up the way it is. But I think the reason that some pundits were unhappy as well is that it came after a loss that wasn't terrible, and they were like, well, if they were going to fire him, why didn't they do it after the game against Toronto when they got blown out of the water? It's like, well, it doesn't necessarily work like that.
Not at all.
Right? And that was maybe one of the final nails in the coffin, but they just eventually decided to go another way. Again, they've admitted they went the wrong way about it.
Right.
But it was a decision that they were going to make regardless.
That's my only issue with it is I don't have a horse in this race. Like Florida's
why I don't
right.
care.
Now,
Florida,
I agree that that they needed some sort of change.
Yeah,
I just don't agree the way that they did fire him.
And that's the unfortunate.
It was
thing.
Unprofessional how they did it for a move that is going to happen to more teams in the future. Hopefully, the next team that does it has a little bit more professionalism when they go to do it.
I think most teams do.
You would think that Florida would have too, though.
Yeah, but and you know what? Things happen as they happen, and the fact of the matter is that the owners are the ones that sign the paychecks and pay everyone,
true.
And they don't really have to apologize to anyone. They've gotten to that point in life where they can pretty well do what they want with, and they can face whatever scrutiny from whoever's going to scrutinize them, but they don't have to apologize. They've done what they've done, and they've done what they felt was needed to be done.
How do you think they've gotten their hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars?
They don't do that by having everyone like them.
Yeah.
So I think it will be interesting to see how the league progresses with that. And
it's going to be a fast change, too. It's going to be something I think that's going to be happening with sooner rather than later.
Well, and most teams have kind of jumped on board to an extent.
But I think to an extent, but in the next months, years, it's going to be more rapid.
You look at like Montreal, for example. They fired their analytics person because he kind of threw down the gauntlet when they were deciding to trade Subban for Weber. He said this is an absolutely terrible deal. He's like, do not take it. Now, Weber will work out, as I think we've previously discussed, in the short run. He will probably be better value for it, but long run, that's a nasty contract. But they fired him over it, and I don't know that they've actually replaced him.
I haven't really looked into it.
I think Montreal is one of those few teams that is not really analytics-based, and they're going to have to move in that direction eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I'm sure once they'll get on board. But
Marc Bergevin does not seem like the type to do that. He's kind of a kooky dude. He just kind of marches to the beat of his. He kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. I think we can all kind of identify with that a bit. But he's going to have to modernize. Every team is going to have to modernize at some point, and you adapt or die.
Yeah, or you'll be a bottom dweller.
Exactly. You're going to be a bottom feeder, and you're not going to draft well. Well, look at Edmonton.
Yeah. They
have their top few players, but they've drafted no one else.
That's right.
That's just kind of the way it goes. But you know what? I think we're going to leave it off there for the week. I think we've hit on some good subjects, and I'm sure we'll come up with a few more. There's
always something that happens during the week that's
absolutely
eager to talk about next week.
Whether it's Loophole Lou or Don Cherry's Suits
or Connor McJesus.
Yeah, exactly. There will be something. So we will sign off now, but we will talk to you later.